Chapter 4. April Blair knew she was trapped. She backed helplessly into the corner and awaited her fate. "Oh no, stop," she cried, raising her hands to protect herself. But her two sisters, Courtney and Whitney, the Terror Twins as April called them, closed in on her. Giggling madly, Courtney held April's hands while Whitney dived and began a ferocious tickling attack. "Stop, stop," April cried through tears of laughter. The two blonde-haired, round-cheeked 6-year-old monsters knew that April was extremely ticklish, and they made the most of their knowledge. "I can't breathe," April gasped, sinking to the floor. "Really? I can't?" That only encouraged them. April tried to roll away from them, but Whitney quickly jumped on her, pinning her against a straw mat that partially covered the living room floor. Courtney continued her attack, concentrating on the most sensitive spot, the back of April's neck. April was squealing with helpless fury when Mrs. Blair burst into the room, loaded down with shopping bags. "April, what are you doing?" she asked, sighing as she set the heavy bags down. Mom certainly has a flair for asking the obvious, April thought. "I'm being tickled," she answered. "We're monsters," Whitney explained, still straddling April's back, her yellow sneakers digging into April's sides. "I know that," Mrs. Blair said sarcastically. "But April, why aren't you helping? There's still plenty to unload from the car." "Sorry," April said quickly, trying unsuccessfully to unload her little sister. "They won't let me help." "April, you're 10 years older than they are," Mrs. Blair said impatiently. "Why do you let them push you around the way you do?" "Mom," April cried, turning it into a 3-syllable word, "they've got me outnumbered, you know." "Yeah," Courtney agreed, and resumed tickling April's neck. "We haven't even opened any windows," her mother wailed. "It's so stuffy in here, April. The house has been closed up all winter. At least you could open the windows and let some fresh air in." "She can't get up," Whitney said, pushing April's head against a straw mat. "You girls are old enough to help too," Mrs. Blair said, hoisting the shopping bags. "No, we're not. We're only 6, Courtney insisted. "You have a smart mouth, young lady," their mother said, exasperated. "So do I," insisted Whitney. "I'm smart too." Mrs. Blair laughed. "Get up and help your father unload the car. You know we didn't come all the way from Shadyside to roll around on a dusty floor. The sooner we get unpacked, the sooner we can get to the beach." Whitney gave April a final push and jumped to her feet. "Let's go to the beach now," she demanded. "Yeah," echoed her twin, tugging April's hand, trying to pull her to her feet. April groaned and stood up. "I'm going to need a vacation after a summer with these two," she declared, dusting off her tennis shorts and sleeveless top, which had started out white but were now gray and streaked with dirt. "Oh, I imagine you'll be spending all of your time with Matt," her mother called from the back bedroom. "We won't see you all summer, as usual." "Let's go to the beach," Courtney demanded, tugging on April's hand. "Ow!" April broke away from her little sister and hurried to the back bedroom to confront her mother. "Don't start in about Matt," she said heatedly. She blew a strand of straight honey blonde hair off her forehead. "I didn't say a word about Matt," Mrs. Blair said defensively. "It's just that—" "Just that what?" April demanded. "Go ahead, say it." "It's just that I thought we'd have a nice family vacation," her mother said, avoiding April's stare as she made the bed. "And that maybe you'd meet a bunch of nice new kids here at Sandy Hollow, instead of hanging around with the same kids you hang around with back in Shadyside." "You mean Matt and Todd?" April said angrily. "Calm down, shh," Mrs. Blair said, raising a finger to her lips. "I guess I was disappointed that Matt and his family decided to summer here again." "What's wrong with Matt?" April demanded, unable to calm down. "We've been going together more than a year, and—" "April, we've had this discussion before," her mother said, with a hint of weariness in her voice. "Matt is perfectly okay. He's very nice, actually, especially compared to a lot of the boys you've brought home." "Gee, thanks," April said sarcastically. "It's just that he's, well, you know, a little immature for you, don't you think? I mean, he's only interested in sports, video games, and horror movies. Don't you think you should look around? Find someone with more intelligent interests? I mean—" "You're right, Mom," April said curtly. "We've had this discussion before." She turned and strode quickly from the room. "April, where are you going?" Mrs. Blair called after her, realizing she had gone too far, said too much. "To help Dad," April called back from the hallway, and then peevishly added, "That's what you wanted, isn't it?" April spent the rest of the afternoon helping her parents. There was so much to do at the summer house: unloading the car, unpacking all the bags, airing out the stuffy rooms, cleaning the house, buying food and supplies, and fighting with Courtney and Whitney. As the sun lowered behind the dunes, Mr. Blair made the first barbecue of the season. Hot dogs and hamburgers sizzled on the grill, the smoke trailing over the tall reeds bending in the breeze. Mr. Blair lived the barbecue. It was about the only thing at the beach he did like. He had delicate, fair skin, so he avoided the beach for the most part. He was happy to lie in a hammock and read, waiting for evening so he could barbecue. After dinner, April excused herself and hurried upstairs to change. Glancing at the clock on her small antique dressing table, she saw that she was already late. She had arranged to meet Matt in town at 7:30. He'd better wait for me, she told herself, pulling off her shorts and tossing them to the floor. Then she searched the closet for a pair of denim cutoffs. "Why do you let your sisters push you around?" Suddenly her mother's words from that afternoon came back to April. "Because it's easier than fighting with them?" April answered the question. "Because it's always easier to give in, not to fight with people? Because I'm a pushover?" All of these answers seemed right to April, and wrong. She brushed her straight blonde hair, her emerald green eyes staring back at her from the scratched dressing table mirror. "Am I really such a pushover?" she asked herself, examining her face in the spotted mirror. She liked what she saw, for the most part. If only her nose were a little longer. She wasn't as pretty as her sisters, but she was okay. "I'm not going to be a pushover about Matt," she decided, pulling her brush through her hair one last time before standing up. "I'm not going to let Mom put him down any more. Matt is a great guy. I'm glad he's going to be at Sandy Hollow, too. We're going to have a really awesome summer together." She waved goodbye to her parents, who were still on the deck and back, playing some kind of leapfrog game with the twin terrors. Then she headed around to the front of the house and, half walking, half jogging, headed along Beach Haven Drive toward town. Beach Haven Drive. She had to laugh. It was such a fancy name for what was nothing more than a narrow, unpaved path. It was about a 10-minute walk from a cluster of summer cottages, past a sandy patch lined with tall reeds, then flat, grassy fields dotted with an occasional oak or willow tree, to the small town. Following the path, April was only about 5 minutes from her house when someone leapt out of the shadows of the tall reeds and grabbed her roughly from behind. Chapter 5. "Gotcha!" Matt cried. He let go of April and stepped onto the road, a taunting grin on his face, his dark eyes challenging her to retaliate. "April Fools!" "Matt, you jerk!" April cried, swinging a fist and missing him as he dodged to one side, laughing. He was always scaring her and crying "April Fools," and she really hated it. She turned to Todd, who had followed his friend out from the tall reeds, his hands shoved into the pockets of his faded jeans. "Tell him he's a jerk," she said, her heart still thudding hard in her chest. "You're a jerk," Todd obediently repeated to Matt. Matt's grin didn't fade. Despite the cool of the evening, he was wearing red and blue baggy shorts and a sleeveless blue t-shirt. Matt stood over April, tall and broad-chested, a little pudgy. With his short brown hair, black eyes, and round cheeks, he reminded April of a big teddy bear. Todd formed a complete contrast to his friend. He was short and lean with curly carrot-colored hair, and a serious expression punctuated by piercing blue eyes. He seldom smiled. He was quiet and shy, especially compared to Matt. Even though the three of them hung out together constantly, Todd often seemed uncomfortable, reluctant to tag along with the other two. In the past few months, April had tried arranging dates for Todd with some of her friends. He was painfully shy around them and never mustered up the courage to ask any of them out a second time. April gave up trying, and Todd just hung out with Matt and her. "When did you get here?" Matt asked, putting an arm possessively around April's shoulder. "This afternoon," she replied. "The house is in pretty good shape, but my parents will be cleaning it for a week." "My mom had a fit when we arrived yesterday," Matt said, "because one of the windows was broken, and some kind of animal had gotten in and left a few surprises on the carpet." "Yuck," April said. "Your mother is such a neat freak she must have dropped her teeth." "Oh no, she took it very calmly. She just said she wanted to turn around and drive back to Shadyside and never come back," Matt said, chuckling. "Hey, this sure beats Fear Street," Todd said, a few paces behind them. Todd lived in a ramshackle old house across the street from the Fear Street Cemetery. Any place would be better than that, April thought. "You won't believe what a great place this is," Matt said to Todd. "It's amazing. It's awesome. Body surfing all afternoon, soaking up the rays, then party on the beach all night, then throw up all morning and start all over again." Matt laughed. April playfully shoved him away. "You're really gross." "What else is new?" Todd asked quietly. "Hey, whose side are you on?" Matt asked, pretending to be offended. He slung his arm back over April's shoulder, and they continued to follow the curving dirt road past flat, grassy fields, a cluster of small white clapboard houses, and finally into the town. The air grew warmer as they stepped onto the wood plank walk that lined Main Street and stopped to look around. April reached up and unloaded Matt's arm from her shoulder. His arm seemed to weigh a ton. "Hey, look," Matt said, pointing. "They added a video game arcade next to Swanee's." He turned back to Todd. "You bring any money?" Todd searched his jeans pockets and pulled out only the blue plastic butane lighter he always carried. He shook his head. Matt turned back to April. "No way," she told him, her green eyes flaring. "We're not hanging out in a stuffy arcade tonight. I thought we were going to walk around town, check out who's here, then go to the beach." "Oh, yeah, right," Matt said, giving the arcade one last longing look. They made their way slowly up one side of Main Street, stopping to check out the shop windows before heading down the other side of the street. Even though the season had just begun, the town was crowded. Main Street was clogged with slow-moving cars, the walks filled with new arrivals chatting, greeting one another, aimlessly moving in pairs and small groups. "Hey, check out the movie theater," Matt cried enthusiastically, staring up at the old-fashioned marquee across the street. "A Living Dead festival!" He slapped Todd a high five. "All right!" He pulled the two of them across the street to study the movie posters displaying the coming attractions. "Look, it's all horror all the time," he declared, slapping Todd another enthusiastic high five. April groaned. She hated horror movies. She couldn't understand why Matt thought they were so terrific. "Come on, Matt," she pulled him away. "What's going on over there?" The old movie theater was the last building on the street. The little town just came to an end there, giving way to a small asphalt rectangle used as a parking lot, and then a wide, grassy field that was used for town picnics and all kinds of sporting events. That night, the field was brightly lit with several spotlights, and the dark outlines of several trucks and vans could be seen on the grass. Hurrying across the parking lot, April and her companions saw what was going on. A carnival was being set up. As they approached, they could hear the shouts of the workers, the whine of saws, and the steady thud of hammers. It didn't seem real. The spotlights, aimed at the sky, created more shadow than light. Workers busily moved in and out of the shadows. Like a dark, silent giant, a Ferris wheel loomed over the field. Colored lights were being strung from poles. Food and game booths were being hammered into place. Men struggled to bolt a small roller coaster track together. April, Matt, and Todd huddled together at the edge of the field, watching the dreamlike spectacle. "Wonder if they'll have a gravitron," Todd said quietly, breaking their silence. "What's that?" April asked. "You know, it's the thing that spins around and then the floor drops out and leaves you pressed against the wall." "Sounds great," April said sarcastically. Matt stared at Todd in surprise. "You like that ride?" "No way," Todd said quickly. "I wouldn't go on it. I just wondered if they have it." "I love Ferris wheels," April said, turning her eyes to the dark structure that towered over the field. "They're for wimps," Matt said scornfully. "I mean, what's scary about a Ferris wheel?" "Why does everything have to be scary?" April demanded. He took her hand. "Come on, let's check out the beach. This is boring." The night sky was clear, bright, and cloudless, and the sandy beach shimmered like a broad silver ribbon under the light of a full moon. Couples walked barefoot along the shore, gentle waves lapping over their ankles. Groups of kids, blankets spread over the powdery sand, sat and talked and laughed. Music boomed from portable radios and tape players, a jangle of sound rising and falling over the rush of water as it lapped at the shore. At the base of a low dune, some kids had built a small bonfire. Making their way toward it, their bare feet moving silently over the soft sand, April and Matt recognized some of the kids, townies they had met the summer before. "Hey, Ben!" Matt called out to a boy with shadows playing over his face from the fire as it darted and flickered. "Whoa!" Ben Ashen, tall and gangly with short spiked hair, wheeled around at the sound of his name and peered at Matt. "Hey, the Matster! How you doing? You still so ugly?" "You still so stupid?" Matt gave Ben a hard slap on the back. Ben groaned. "Do that again and I'll hurl on you." "What a class guy!" Matt exclaimed, and raised his hand to give Ben another hard backslap, but Ben edged away. Several other kids greeted April and Matt. They lowered themselves onto a communal blanket, feeling the warmth of the crackling fire. Huddled in a red glow, everyone began talking at once. "Hey, Todd, there's room for you," Matt called, suddenly remembering his friend. Todd, who had been left standing awkwardly in the shadows, hands in his pockets, hesitantly lowered himself to the blanket on the other side of April. "Hey, everyone, this is Todd," Matt announced. "You see the new arcade?" Ben asked Matt. "It's excellent." "I saw it, but I didn't bring any money," Matt said. "I've got some," Ben told him, rising to his knees. "Come on, let's go." Matt started to get up, then remembered April. Not tonight, man. He put an arm possessively around April's shoulders and turned to smile at her. Her emerald eyes glowed, reflecting the firelight. She smiled back at him and lowered her forehead affectionately against his chest. Well, I'm out of here, Ben announced, climbing to his feet. Later, Matt said without looking up. Ben started jogging over the dune. Bring some money tomorrow night, he called back to Matt. Steal it if you have to. He's a class guy, isn't he? Matt said quietly, holding April close. She made a face, then glanced over at Todd, who was by himself at the edge of the blanket, staring at the fire, not talking to anyone. She saw that he was twirling the blue plastic lighter between his fingers, moving it back and forth in his hand, the way he always did when he felt nervous or uncomfortable. April started to say something to him, but before she could, Matt put his hand on her chin, tilted her head up to his, and began to kiss her. That one, Jessica said, red eyes aflame, peering at Gabri in the darkness. Which one? Gabri asked, floating beside her, the wind filling his outspread wings. The blonde girl, Jessica said impatiently. The two bats lowered themselves toward the ring of teenagers around the campfire, but stayed high enough to remain in the dark and out of sight. She's perfect for you, Gabri, Jessica said, her voice a wet whisper through her slender, pointed fangs. Look at that blonde hair, those rosy, milk-fed cheeks, that wholesome good health. She's just your type. A hiss of laughter escaped her small opening of a mouth. No, Gabri whispered, fluttering his black wings in agitation. That big lunk of a boy has his arm around her. He's kissing her. She has a boyfriend, Jessica. I really must protest. I really must protest, Jessica imitated his voice, mocking him. You really sound like a bad movie, Gabri. I don't care. I protest. The girl you've chosen for me has a boyfriend. How am I to win her affections if... You didn't think I'd make it easy for you, Jessica declared. Another hiss of laughter sprang the night sky. She soared high as he attempted to bump her, then allowed herself to float back beside him. Of course, if you'd like to give up now, she teased. No, Gabri cried, tilting toward the leaping flames below, then swooping easily away. His tiny red eyes peered through the darkness, attaching to April like evil radar, studying her carefully. Well, Jessica asked impatiently. I accept the challenge, Gabri replied, a gob of white spittle sliding down the fur of his chin. The girl is so luscious, so ready, so ripe. Save the poetry for when you're alone with her, Jessica snapped. You really are the biggest jerk. Were you this bad when you were alive? Gabri's bat eyes narrowed as he stared hard into hers. Even in bat form, the eyes revealed deep sorrow. I don't remember, he whispered. I don't think I ever was alive. Jessica refused to allow herself to be touched by his words. She filled the air with dry, scornful laughter. Never mind, he cried hoarsely, ruby eyes lighting with fire. He tilted away from her, swooping just above the yellow light of the fire. Suspended in the night air, wings outstretched, allowing the wind and currents to carry him this way, then that, Gabri stared down at the shifting figures around the fire. Have you found a victim for me? Jessica asked, her voice drifting down from somewhere above. Yes, Gabri hissed, encircling his rodent-like body with his wings, then shooting them out and soaring back up to meet her. Which one? Jessica asked eagerly, her lips wet with anticipation, the thought of fresh blood making her heart flutter faster than her wings. That one, Gabri declared, the little skinny one with the red hair. Jessica peered down into the firelight, training her eyes on Todd. The one sitting by himself, not talking to anyone? Yes, Gabri replied, obviously pleased with his selection. That guy won't warm up to anyone, not even you, Jessica. I'm afraid you've lost our bet, Jessica taunted, deliberately brushing Gabe out of her way. I'll warm that boy up easily, and then he'll be cold forever. Her dry, hoarse laughter ruffled against the wind. Having selected their victims, the two bats slid low in the sky, then floated high, soaring into the dark emptiness high above the dunes. Tucked next to Matt, April raised her eyes just as the bat swooped near and uttered a loud gasp. Matt, did you see them? 2 of them? She cried. Don't pay any attention to them, Matt told her, pulling her close. They're perfectly harmless. Chapter 6. It took Todd a while to realize that the small dots hopping along in the puddled shadows were birds. He stood on the low, smooth rock watching them, trying to focus on them. They're terns, he decided, his eyes following them as they made their way along the shoreline, zigzagging around one another until the darkness swallowed them up. His hands shoved into the pockets of his cutoffs, Todd turned and allowed his eyes to follow the sloping line of rocks up to where they flattened out, forming a shelf on top of a steep cliff. Then, turning back to the water, he could just barely make out the low black outline of the small island, like the top of a submarine coming up for air, an island where all the bats supposedly came from. Why are there so many bats on this beach, he wondered, searching the hazy purple sky for the fluttering creatures. He saw none. He couldn't see very far. Low clouds pushed over the shore, filtering the moonlight, making the beach shadows long and strange. Wisps of fog trailed along the shoreline. The air was cool, heavy, and damp. This end of the beach, south of the rowboat dock, across from the mysterious wooded island, was usually deserted, he had discovered. That's why he liked it so much. He could lean peacefully against the smooth, cool rocks and stare out at the water for as long as he wanted. How long had he been standing there watching the clouds lower and the fog drift in? Todd wasn't sure. He knew he was supposed to meet April and Matt down the beach. He was probably late. Hope we're not turning into some kind of weird loner, he warned himself, stepping away from the rocks and starting to trudge up the beach. This could be a great summer, he thought. If only I could shape up and stop being such a drag. If only I could stop feeling so awkward, so out of place all the time, and... His thoughts were interrupted by a fluttering sound overhead. Turning his eyes to the low, hazy sky, he saw several bats swooping and soaring, disappearing into the thick cloud cover, then suddenly scooting low enough to be seen again. Bats are good, he told himself. They eat insects. But their fluttering sound so near, echoing off the steep rock cliffs, and the shrill chatter they made gave Todd a chill. He took a few long steps, wet sand invading his rubber thongs, and then stopped. He was no longer alone. Someone was there. Behind him, back by the rocks. He hadn't seen anyone. He just had that feeling. He knew. The fluttering sound overhead grew louder, closer, then quickly faded. The wind off the ocean whipped at his sweatshirt. Todd turned around and saw the girl staring at him. She stood a few feet from the rocks, barefoot. As she approached, the beach seemed to light up, and Todd could see her as clearly as if it were daytime. She was beautiful. "Hi," she said softly, staring at him shyly with big dark eyes. She was wearing a flowered sarong skirt and a matching bikini top. With a toss of her head, she waved her long red hair behind her bare shoulders. She smiled at him with full dark lips. I didn't see you," Todd stammered. What a dumb thing to say, he told himself, immediately wishing he could sink into the sand and never be seen again. I think I'm lost," the girl said, coming closer. Close enough that he could see how pale her skin was. Close enough that he could smell her perfume, the scent of lilacs. "Huh? Lost?" She nodded, her full lips forming a pout. She's the most beautiful girl I've ever seen, Todd thought. He realized he was gaping at her. Embarrassed, he cast his eyes down to the sand. "My family is renting a cottage," she told him, gliding even closer, "right near the ocean. We just arrived this afternoon, and I think I'm all turned around." She shrugged, a helpless gesture, her shoulders as smooth and pale as ivory under the hazy night sky. "Yeah, well," Todd cleared his throat. "Why does my voice sound so tight and choked?" "Most of the summer houses are on that end," he managed to get out, and pointed to the north end of the beach. "Up that way?" she asked hesitantly. "Yeah, I'll show you," Todd said. I'm going that way. Meeting some friends." "Thanks," she said, and, to Todd's surprise, reached out and took his arm. Her flowery scent invaded his nostrils, seemed to encircle him. He suddenly felt dizzy, but forced himself to walk, his thongs sinking into the wet sand. "I've never been here before," she said softly. "It's so beautiful. I know it's going to be fun." "Yeah, it's very pretty," Todd said. "I'm walking on a dark beach with the most beautiful girl I've ever seen," he thought, "and all I can think of to say is that the beach is pretty? Yuck." "It's very foggy," he said. "That's why the beach is so empty and dark tonight." Oh, great, now I'm giving her weather reports, he thought. "You're lucky to have friends here," she said, turning to smile at him, still clinging to his arm. "I don't know anybody." "That's too bad," Todd replied awkwardly. "Maybe you can be my friend," she said, and giggled self-consciously. Wow, Todd thought. "Where are you from?" she asked. Todd told her. He continued to lead the way, walking slowly, breathing in her perfume, stealing glances at her, wishing the beach were longer so they wouldn't reach their destination so quickly. He tried to think of things to say to her, but she was so close and so beautiful that he was even more tongue-tied than usual. Luckily, she kept up the conversation, asking him questions about school and his family, telling him about her family and her life in Maine. I wonder if she likes me, Todd thought. I wonder if she'll go out with me if I ask her. If I ask her. The big if. Could he summon the nerve to ask? They both heard it at the same time, that fluttering of wings so low, so close overhead. "Oh!" she cried out and squeezed his arm. "It's okay," he said, trying to sound assured. "The bats don't bother anyone." She laughed, a surprising laugh. Why did it strike her as funny? "By the way, my name is Jessica," she said. He realized she was still squeezing his arm. He told her his name. Her perfume was so sweet. The white beach seemed to tilt beneath him. "Oh, my house is right up there," she said, pointing. "You were right." He followed the direction of her finger. It was suddenly so foggy, so gray and foggy, he could barely make out any houses beyond the dunes. There was no one on the beach. The water seemed far away, beyond the fog, beyond the clouds that seemed to lower around him. "Thanks for helping me, Todd," she whispered. He loved the way she said his name. "That's okay," he said. "Should I ask her out? Should I ask her to meet me on the beach tomorrow? Will she say yes? Will she laugh at me?" Before he could decide, she was kissing him. He nearly toppled backward in surprise. Before he could decide, before he could say anything, before he realized what was happening, her arms, so pale, so light, were around him. She pulled on him ever so gently, pulled his face to hers, lowered her face to his. Those lips, those dark, dark lips, pressing so tenderly against his. Tenderly at first, and then harder. "Oh, wow," he thought. "Oh, wow, she likes me." Then she was kissing him as no girl had ever kissed him before, kissing his mouth, his cheek, his neck. Kissing his neck as the clouds lowered and the fog circled in, kissing his neck as the sands tilted beneath him. She was holding his head and kissing his neck hard, harder. The smell of the perfume, the roar of the ocean, the soft wetness of her lips, the fog, the thick fog, it all swept over Todd, swept over him, over him, over him, until he sank into a cool, waiting darkness.